let's come to Ubuntu. And what does Ubuntu actually mean? Now, we often speak about Ubuntu as, a person is a person because of other people.
You're a person because other people
exactly.
are there.
I am because we are. And we've made the era of humanizing Ubuntu. Because Ubuntu is far more than just the human interaction. So now when we break down in Proto-Bantu the etymology of Ubuntu, and we get to Untu, and Untu, which is that all-pervasive force that moves through everything. It is in everything. It subsists and persists through everything, And Untu then manifests in different forms. The first formation of Untu is Muntu, or Bantu in the plural. And Muntu is a reasoned being. It is we human beings, reasoned beings, those who are able to, as the age of enlightenment, wants to glorify reason, through our mental capacities. And Muntu are then the human beings. But what's very interesting in our Bantu cosmology,
their code of ethics is
Ubuntu, exactly. What's very interesting in our African cosmology is that trees also fall under this category, because they're the ones
trees are human also.
They're human. They're the ones which transport the ancestors into the nether realms. They're the ones who form that movement of the ancestry. That's why in many of our indigenous cultures, when somebody dies, we'll plant a tree, in their honor, so that's
Mudzi, Umu,
exactly.
Mudzimu, in the roots. In the roots. That's where it's happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what do trees do? They root into the earth, so as below, through their branches, as above. So they're the epitome of how we as human beings are meant to be in communion with the cosmos. Then the next aspect of this Untu is it manifests in unreasoned beings, which are Kintu, which are things.
Inti. Yeah, they say Manga Sana Buntu.
Exactly. Exactly. And these are acted on by Muntu or Bantu, And as we've said, trees do not fall under this category.
Trees fall under humanity.
They fall under humanity. But what's very interesting is then the next one, which is Hantu. Now, if we go to Hantu. Now,
there's Ntu.
Yeah, there's
Buntu. There is this Hantu. Let's go through.
Now, Hantu.
I'm in class today, guys. Allow me to learn. It's my space.
Now, if we go to Limpopo, we'll find a place called Hamulimo or Hamujaji, or what does this actually mean?
It's Ha.
It's talking about time. It's talking about location. It's talking about periodicity. It's talking about locality. So, and it's telling us that time and space, exactly, time and space are collapsed into one continuum. So, Ha denotes time and space. Now, this is something which quantum physics has only recently discovered in the last 100 years, that time and space are actually one continuum. They collapse into one continuum.
It's a matrimony.
Exactly.
It's actually, it births. Which one? How do you say it? It births.
Yes.
It births interpretation to reality.
Yes.
Because when time and space meet together, that is a confluence.
Exactly, that confluence
of reality.
Of reality is Hantu. Yeah, and so Ntu also moves through time and space. So if this, and then the last one is Kuntu, which is a modality, which is something like fear, which is beauty, which is something you can't touch.
Aesthetics.
Exactly. So
that's Kuntu. Kuntu is the beauty of aesthetics. Hantu
is time, space.
Is time and space in colliding.
Yeah.
Then Ubuntu is the way you express yourself in your community.
Yes.
Then Tu is the force that lives and moves within the trees and humanity to create civilization. Wow.
And now if
I'm learning today.
Exists in everything, then of course I can be a relative with an elephant, because Ntu is as much moving through me as a reason to
as in the fish,
as it is in the fish,
as in the eagle,
as
in the baboon,
as even a locality, as in a site,
as in Hantu,
so
when the African child's umbilical cord is cut,
exactly,
and it is buried in the ground,
exactly,
it is to connect the Ntu to the Bantu.
Exactly.
I'm seeing there's a person called Susan Mangolis who is with us on the social media space, and she's saying actually Huntu, Huntu, Hunu, Hunu in Shona means that actually that's humanity. And someone in Angola also put a statement that says actually the Ntus and the Huntus in the greater Angolan space actually speaks also of the connectivity of human beings to the greater plural of the environment which are living in, which actually goes in congruence with what our Honorable Gogo Rutendo was telling us this morning, that human beings and trees are actually classified together, so that Huntu, Hunu, Huntu is actually not just you living by yourself, but also speaks. In my book, So You Want With the Master, I put a chapter there entitled Ecological Intelligence, where in the midst of civility, if you have become numb to your environment, maybe you've stopped surviving and stopped existing, because how do you live without clean water, clean air, clean food, and etc., and all these things that you might think that you can undermine? They actually have a direct access and impact into a greater life space. You were taking us through the greater space of Miyka'el as being the bedrock of our conversation, and I interrupted your conversation there. I want to take you back a little bit, then we can sage back forward a bit. When you look at governance systems, when you look at modernity in its arrogance of civility about bringing civilization to the world, and here you are as a greater Egyptologist and a student of Egyptian knowledge systems, and you look into the face of democracy, and you look into the faces of all these modern systems of governing people, vis-a-vis the knowledge that you have of Kemet and the greater Imhotep himself. What would be your commentary when you look into the face of such arrogance?
Well, I think first of all, we've just been speaking about Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is the same concept as Miyka'el. If we now go back into Kemet, or what is often called ancient Egypt. Now, Miyka'el was a construct. It was a deified construct. It was a way of being. It denoted the divine law upon which all things are placed. And that divine law, I'd love to say, is that which governs the way Ubuntu, as we've been describing it, moves through all of existence as it is. Now, Miyka'el was the principle of, is the principle of interdependence, interconnectedness.
There's no independence.
Interrelated.
There's no independence.
Not independence. Interdependence.
Dependence. So the human being, when you look at the ant, you and the ant are interdependent.
We're in relationship.
Husband and wife, interdependent.
Absolutely.
You and nature,
interdependent.
I like that. You just strike the chord in my spirit. You forgive me.
Not a problem.
I might look like sometimes I deviate, but when I get to an aha moment, allow me to enjoy it a little bit. So life is not about independence. Life is about interdependence. The other person, the other object, that you may think they have nothing to do with you.
Absolutely. And I mean, that whole thing of interdependence is what they call chaos theory in quantum physics, you know, where the flap of one butterfly here in South Africa can cause a tsunami in Japan, you know, because everything is interdependent. It's that Bantu that, you know, that moves through. So the intention, as you said, you know, somehow we matched without knowing, you know, because the intention was there, because we're all subsisting and persisting through this Bantu that moves through us. And that is the interdependence of life. It is also the interconnectedness. We are connected to everything.
Everything is connected.
And interrelatedness. We are related.
No, you're messing up my head now. Everything is connected is good.
Yeah.
But everything is related.
Is related.
Now that's deep.
We're all related.
That's deep.
Everything. And actually, if we look at the Native Americans, they tend to say all my relations, you know, and when they say all my relations, they're talking about the two-legged relations, they're talking about the flying relations, they're talking about the mountains, they're talking about the caves, and that is
my relations.
All my relations.
To a Red Indian, it speaks of their entire connectivity or connectiveness to everything else that is around them. So the Red Indian has a relation with the water.
With the water.
Has a relationship with the air.
Absolutely.
Has a relationship with the four-legged animals.
Absolutely.
Has a relationship with the fish. and the fox and the horse, his wife and his children.
And that is
life is about managing
those relations. And that is what we have lost. We have lost that interconnection.
So guys, you forgive me. I just have a moment. I just have a moment here. Wow. Wow, that's deep. That's deep. Life is about relationships.
Absolutely.
We have lost relationships. And the Miyka'el law, as you are saying it, brings these relationships together. How does that happen?
So unfortunately, we're now living in a time where we think we're apart from nature. You know, we seek dominion over nature or domination over nature as opposed to abuse. Actually,
it's not even domination. Domination is do we cut one tree, plant one.
Exactly.
So that 2 years later, 3 years later, but cutting just, indiscriminately, and you call that domination, I don't think that we're glorifying or pontificating corruption. And
if we look into our indigenous way, you never take anything without giving. If we look at the Bushmen, they will never get even a root without leaving anything. They'll leave their hair, they'll leave something, to say thank you, may you grow, may you germinate. You don't just take and take and take. And this taking is making us apart from nature instead of a part of nature.
Just because I'm a practical, this is a show about real people. My mind tends to run between the knowledge systems of the past and the present environment. And when you say, in our generation, we're just taking and taking and taking. I'm looking at present relationships, husbands and wives. I'm looking at children and their parents. I'm looking at governments and their jurisdiction. I'm looking at the community and the government. All banks and how do you take money from me for depositing money into my account? And when I want my money back, it's going to cost me
more money
to take my money. But you've actually made 1,000 rand more, but you still want to charge me for the 20 rand less at the bottom. I've never understood that. And now that I know actually that it's happening, when you mention those big concepts, that in nature you can take and take and take. And I'm coming to a present generation. In politics, you can't just take and take and take. Even in religion, in Christianity, bring the offerings, bring the tithes, just take and take and take. And you're saying there comes a time when the person who is being taken away from says, oops, the party is over. And that's where the greater cosmic conflicts, that a butterfly flies in Mpumalanga and it cries that, guys, there is rubbish in this world and there's a tsunami in Hawaii. Now I hear you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so this is all going away from the law of sacred reciprocity. That's what Miyka'el is.
Sacred?
Reciprocity.
Sacred.
Reciprocity.
Take us through where the students today.
So Miyka'el tells us about reciprocity. It tells us that if I am taking or I'm receiving, then I must also be able to give. And it is a sacred exchange. It is a sacred exchange. And that exchange is not necessarily an exchange of material, but there has to be even an intention of reciprocity. And this is what Miyka'el bases its
Guys, I don't know if you are listening here. If you guys could hear the science of relationships that I'm hearing here, that it's not even about you buying flowers. It's not about you buying your wife a Bentley. It is the intention that you are sending through, the energy that you are sending through. And by the way, to be honest is to say the other person never misses the intention.
Absolutely.
That one will get through. Even if a gift is messed up or the gift is over precious or whatever. But the intention is always, finally when you're by yourself, say, oh, so you thought you'd bribe me with a car. The ultimate intention will always come out. So, and I'm actually fascinated when I hear you mention that it's not even in the abundance of gifts that matters, but actually that the human soul has an intention, and from the intention comes the multiplicity, the progress, the success, and etc.
Absolutely. And that intention is what animates and do. So that intention is an animating energy. It's an energy that starts to animate into, and then manifests in the way it will manifest on the other hand.
And flowers.
You know, whether it manifests as flowers, or whether it manifests as a tsunami, or whether it manifests as a divorce. You know, it will animate then into.
So what's the difference between do and karma?
Karma. Well, I think they're interrelated, you know, because as you have done, so shall you reap their effects, you know, so...
Because ka is knowledge, ma is mother. So karma, for me, is simply translated knowledge of mother. And knowledge of mother, if you must start cascading it down, it has to do with respect, dignity, and you would not want to do to anyone's mother what you don't want to be done to your mother. That's why the biggest swear word is if I call your mother. So ka, ma, ka, knowledge of ma. You pardon me before I also get carried away.
No, absolutely. As you reap, so shall you sow. Whatever it is that you plant, that's what you're going to reap. You know, that's as whatever you sow, that's what you're going to reap. That's what you're going to harvest, and that's essentially what karma, you know, and that's the intention. The intention, it's an energy. It's an energy. So when we speak about an emotion, that is energy in motion. You know, what we project, it actually in Kemet, we're told that it is an energy which is called wajit. Now, wajit is an energetic force. It's a psychic force, you know, which moves through time and space. And as we know, the body has an energetic aspect to it.
Electronic,
you know, electromagnetic aspect to it. So yes, we've got our physical body here, you know, but we actually have an auric body, you know, what they call the aura, and we start to see the word ra there, or what they call the chakras, you know, the energy centers that are the 7 major energy centers that are on the body, and these tell us that we're actually energetic beings. We're actually able to move things through energy, you know, and that energy animates into, and it animates it into either the muntu or the kuntu or the kintu or the hantu, you know, and then we start seeing the effects that we have in the world today. So our intentions, individual and our collective intentions, are what are governing, because the question was around governance, you know, are what are governing the world today. And unfortunately, they're not being governed necessarily through the principles of Ma'at, which is interdependence, interconnectedness, and interrelatedness. And what Ma'at actually stands for is 2 major principles. It is truth and love. And so love in ancient Egypt was a highly scientific construct, you know, a highly scientific construct that's based on the principles, as I've said, of interdependence, interconnectedness, and interrelatedness, and all that we've described about Bantu. When you live in harmony and in alignment with that, then that is love. Not what we are.
That's scary.
You know, considering.
Say it again slowly. So love was defined by your compliance with greater knowledge of understanding of the diversity of the relationships around you.
Absolutely.
So you cannot say you love me as a person when you've just cut down a tree.
Exactly.
Because your relationship with the tree and the fish and the eagle and me, and it's all connected together.
Absolutely.
Did I
absolutely, perfectly, yeah. And when you understand that, that is truth. When you understand that interrelatedness, interdependence, and interconnectedness, that is truth. So yes, when I am going to rape Mother Earth to steal its diamonds in order to give it to you as an act of love, that cannot be love. You know, in the totality of what Ma'at describes love. Because
love is preservative.
It's preservative, and it's regenerative as well. You know, it regenerates. Now, when I keep mining out of the earth, you know, without feeding back and giving back, all for the purpose of commercial gain and capitalist gain, that is not love.
When you say you love me, it is the day when you can plant the vegetables and then you harvest some of them. Then the ones that you're giving me, and say, with love. But wherever you have taken them out of,
you've given back. You've
given them back to where they're coming from. So if it comes to our interpersonal, this for me is like, it's a wow moment. I'm actually having some goosebumps on my back, because it's giving me a whole new opinion about how to interpret my reality. What I could have thought when someone buys me flowers and say, I love you. Actually, that's not love. tell me how many flowers you planted before you harvested these ones, so that where you took off, there is more that is coming. And love, therefore, has this. To me, that was like a wow moment, because you can never be giving away something that is destroying something, and then you say it is humanity. Humanity is found in finding the congruence, the intersections between me, things, and others. Did I get it? Did I hear it well?
Absolutely. And when we're on the
and when you're talking, I'm doing my own reflection.
Absolutely.
So it's my class. It's my master class. You are the teacher today.
And when we're speaking of flowers and that interrelatedness and that interconnectedness and that interdependence, what is it that allows the flowers to blossom? You know, it is the bees and the butterflies.
There you go.
You know,
there you go.
And
messing up my head again.
And when we look at, and these are two very interesting animals to look at.
Butterfly and the bees.
You know, so with the bees, you know, they love the nectar, you know, of the flowers, and then they move from one flower
and
to
they're pollinating
other.
also.
And they're pollinating.
Yes.
So their very act of receiving, eating the nectar, they're giving, they're giving. And then, of course, they go back into the hive, which, of course, it is a matrilineal, you know, a system. Matriarchy.
Let's get these new theologians to discuss the beehive.
So the beehive theology.
The patriarch.
Exactly.
And that theology will fall off the rails.
Exactly. You know, and they're able to produce this incredible substance called honey, the sweetness of life. You know, and when we go to Kemet, they speak about nechem, which is the sweetness and the.
Which actually, by the way, that's a root word for nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you know, yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, and all of that it's cyclical, and then, you know, the badgers will eat, you know, of that honey, and then they will help the environment in this way, and then all of that is a cycle. You know, it's just this ecological cycle.
Everything connected.
Just everything is connected. Everything is reciprocated. Everything is in ma'at. It is in sacred reciprocity. You know, and with the butterflies, we know that the butterflies who eventually, you know, are also helping in the pollination process. They begin as caterpillars that are really coming into contact with the fullness of their beings with the earth. You know, they're really either the earth or the trees. They really have to come to understand every single aspect of this that is nature before they go into their cocoon. You know, and only once they have understood the fullness of neter, which is where nature comes from, you know, neter, NTR in Kemet, which means all that is, then can they go into that cocoonment to then become the butterflies that have wings. You know, and this is what's responsible for those flowers that we cut and we hand over, you know, in the name of love. So if we don't have all of those connections with us, you know, we cannot truly be speaking the language of love, and therefore not truly speaking truth, which is the principle that Ma'at, you know, governs. She governs truth, interdependence, and because she governs truth, then she governs the divine law. And the divine law, according to Ma'at, when we see what Ma'at looks like as a deified deity in Kemet, and we always had to look at how they depicted their deities, you know, in order to understand it. You know, she is a woman. She's always feminine. You know, she always has an ostrich feather on.
I brought a guinea fowl today.
Indeed.
But on ostrich feather on her.
She has an ostrich feather on her head, and then she either carries the papyrus scepter
and the balancing,
or the scale. And the scale is balanced on the one.
Can you find me that picture, guys, of a woman called Ma'at?
Ma'at, yeah.
Ma'at. She's a beautiful Egyptian woman who has an ostrich feather on her head. On one hand, she's holding papyrus. On the other hand, she's holding the balancing scale.
The balancing
Usually,
scale.
she has some blue things around it, and a nice Egyptian god like kneeling down like that. But it's a woman. Because we want to build up some theology around the issue of the patriarchy versus feminism. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you give me that picture? You got it. You're still explaining.
Okay, yes. So she usually has the scales. On the one hand is a heart, and on the other hand is a feather. The same feather, the ostrich feather. You know, that is
the heart represents.
Now the heart is the idea behind that is that for us to truly love and to truly live truth, or to truly live ma'at, our hearts must be as light as a feather. Now, what do you need to do for your
Hold me now. Go slowly, please. Go slowly.
And it is...
Go start again.
In order for you to truly live Ma'at or Ubuntu, in order for you to truly be love and truth, your heart must be as light as a feather. It must be measured against that feather. And that is measuring it.
Lose the weight of emotion.
Lose the weight of emotion.
And be as light as a feather.
Indeed. Lose the greed. Lose, the guilt. Lose, the hankering.
Remove everything in your heart until the weight of your heart
is as light as a feather.
It is as light as a feather. Then you can begin to love.
Then you can understand what love is.
Hey!
Now, it is not any feather. And it's because the idea is this just a mythological? Is it just why a feather? If you look at that feather, it's not a chicken feather, which is quite light. It's not it's not even a guinea fowl feather. It's not even an eagle feather.
It's an ostrich.
It's an ostrich feather. Now, the ostrich is the largest bird. And when we measure the weight of an ostrich feather, it's about 108 grams. So it is comparable. You can actually, the weight of an ostrich feather you can actually,
you can put a weight to it.
You can actually put a weight to it. Now, what is it about the ostrich? That is peculiar. The ostrich is the fastest two-legged animal on Earth. It runs at about 70 kilometers per hour, even up to 90 kilometers per hour. It is not the fastest bird, but it doesn't fly. It is a flightless bird, but
so
it runs.
Don't be arrogant. Don't fly anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
You may have the wings,
but it can run.
But don't fly. No, I'm hearing you.
Yeah.
If you're saying you'd be as light as an ostrich, and we're beginning to pick up elements of an ostrich, I'm already hearing you say you could be the largest.
Yes.
You could have the biggest profession. You could have the biggest job. You could be that and more. You still have wings to fly, but don't fly anywhere. You stay on the ground.
Exactly.
I like that.
And so the ostrich stays on the ground. It stays on the ground.
Be rooted.
It's rooted. Now, I'm trying to just show how those in Kemet think, because, you explained yourself and you spoke about all the different facets that make you up. So I'm just trying to build a story here. Now, so it's the ostrich. It's not any other bird, it's the ostrich. It's not the great eagle, And then the ostrich, when you look at the ostrich egg compared to the eggs of any other bird, it is large. It is the largest egg by far. And when we look at the solar system, we know that Ma'at is governed, according to those in Kemet, by the planet of Jupiter. And Jupiter is the largest planet in our particular solar system. And Jupiter is the one that governs truth and wisdom. It is the planet that governs truth and wisdom. So our Kemetic ancestors have already drawn all of this into this one bird, which is the feather of Ma'at.
Just by a picture.
Just by a picture.
Putting a feather of an ostrich
against
and putting a heart. And say, if you are falling in love, your heart must be as light as a feather. And yet you're already looking at cosmology there.
Yes.
Jupiter, how that governs the earth and etc.
Exactly.
Guys, it's my chance to learn. Give me an opportunity to dig in and get as much information as we can here on your show, Sankofa, with our guest of honor today, Ugogo Rutendo, taking us through the greater spaces of ancient knowledge systems. Let's make sense of the present so that we can look into the future.